You're trapped. The blood in your veins runs cold from fear, but it's hot outside. The blindfold over your eyes is damp from the sweat dripping from your forehead. It's dark and quiet. The only sound you can hear is the blood pounding in your ears and your own ragged breaths. The silence leaves you alone with nothing to distract you from your racing thoughts. Has it been a minute? An hour? Will I ever be let out? Fed? Given water? Will I survive? I'm Marina. With me I have my best friend Laura, and this is Grim.
Is this a recording from what your child thinks when you put her to bed?
Yes, she's like, I can't hear people talking. Will they ever come back?
Will
and
they
get
feed me? Will they give me water?
Can I go to the bathroom?
Yep. Always.
14 times.
Always.
We're back, bitches.
Hello.
It's Laura.
It's me.
We are back to our regularly scheduled program with
That's it. We're here.
with a
Like nothing ever happened.
hell of a case.
Oh boy.
It's a hell of a case.
I'm excited.
It's also going to be multiple parts for sure because
Yeah.
I read a 400-page book and couldn't help but include all of the details.
all of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I couldn't leave any of them out.
But I like when you don't leave them out.
I know.
Because it's like when you do read a really good book, I like longer books because I get so into it that once I get to the end of it, I'm very upset. So I'd rather it be longer.
And it's really funny because I hear people do shorter versions of cases and I'm like, wow, that gave like a really great view of the case. But then I read these books and I'm like, I can't leave out anything. Like they
Yeah.
need to know she shaved her leg on day 10. Like,
Exactly.
you know?
Give it away, why don't you?
That actually is
Jeez.
completely unrelated to the case, but just something that popped up in my head.
I get it.
So for part one of this case, I relied exclusively on the book The Perfect Victim by Christine McGuire and Carla Norton. Just a heads up, this case is bad, like almost toy box killer bad at times.
Oh, dear.
So if
Oh,
you're
no.
triggered by kidnapping, sexual assault, torture, or claustrophobia, I'd sit this one out if I were you. This is not, this case is not for you.
Okay, so I'll see you next week.
Yeah, no, you're here, but everybody else has been warned.
Yes.
Before we all head off on an incredibly disturbing journey, first we have new Patreon shout-outs.
Yay!
And Laura's back to shout-outs.
Yay! I missed it.
First up, we have Kayla K.
Kayla K, we love
we love
you.
you.
Yay.
Next up, we have Emmy V.
Emmy, is it IMM?
IMMY.
Emmy.
Emmy
Yay!
V. Woo, love it. It's different.
We try really, really, really hard to pronounce everything correctly. That's why I was asking.
We really do. And asterisk, I tried so hard last week or last month. I don't even know. Whatever
Last time.
Yeah, the last time I tried, but I got it wrong. Miche, thank you for
Miche,
reaching out
woo!
and telling me what the correct pronunciation was. And I did try really hard.
You did.
And I
You
still
did.
failed.
But you can say asterisk.
Asterisk.
You can say that. And
Asterisk.
You can't. Yeah.
So thank you, Miche.
Yes, thank you.
Brittany L.
Brittany L.
Woo!
Woo!
Brittany, we love you. Danielle.
Danielle,
we
woo!
love you.
We love
Thank
you,
you so
Danielle.
much. We have Melissa M.
Melissa
we
M,
love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yay.
We have Pate Lee Gremlin number 1.
We love you. We got so happy when your thing came through. We were like, that is the coolest name.
That is quite the
love
username.
you.
We love it.
Love it.
We love you, Pate Lee Gremlin number 1.
Yes.
And Jasmine K.
Jasmine
Woo,
K.
woo,
Woo!
woo. We love you, Jasmine.
Your name is awesome too.
And we want to be part of your world.
Isn't that
Aladdin?
no? Isn't that a Little Mermaid?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
a
wait,
whole
wait,
new
wait.
world.
That's what I
is
was
Jasmine.
thinking. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Mhm.
Yeah. Nobody's
was-
part of that world yet. It's a new one. Okay.
Okay, I was thinking a whole new world, and I was like, Princess Jasmine
So,
is obviously Aladdin.
I don't know all your movie bullshit, but I do know Disney. Okay. I got that one covered.
And I just saw something the other day that's like when Aladdin said, I'm going to show you a whole new world, he really just meant we're going to fly around the city we both live in.
Facts.
Anyways, well, Jasmine, we're going to show you a whole new world, and we're going to be part of it. Okay, so let's do this.
That's the last time you're going to laugh.
Yeah. So we are talking about the kidnapping of Colleen Jean Stan, who is also known as the girl in the box.
Oh no.
Oh,
I know just enough to dread all of it. Oh no.
So let's start out by talking about Colleen. Colleen Jean Martin was born on New Year's Eve in 1956, the first daughter of Jack and Evelyn Martin. Colleen's two sisters, Janice and Bonnie Sue, followed. Colleen grew up in Riverside, California, and had an unremarkable childhood. Her parents divorced when she was just 3 years old, but there was little disruption to her life, and she maintained a close relationship with both parents. Both Jack and Evelyn remarried, and Colleen ended up with two half-sisters and a half-brother to round out the family. Colleen was described as creative. She had a talent for poetry, and she wrote and designed cards for loved ones, which I think is so sweet. She was only average in school and had no intentions of going to college, which she felt just wasn't in the cards for her, which nowadays I wish more people would realize that instead of like riddling themselves in debt and then being like, I should have gone into HVAC.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. In 1972, at just 16 years old, she dropped out of school and married 22-year-old Tom Stan, who she had met months earlier. And surprisingly, she had her father's blessing. He was totally okay with it.
16, you said?
She was 16,
Wow.
he was 22. Yep. Colleen and Tom moved to his home state of Ohio, but within a year, the marriage was over and Colleen moved back to Riverside.
Wow.
I guess that's what happens sometimes when you get married at 16.
Yeah, married, divorced before you're legally able to vote.
Does it even count? Like, if you get married at 16 and you're married for less than a year, like, would you even be like, I've been married before?
I don't know. It's like the same as an arrest, right? It gets expunged. I don't know.
Hey, Laura, have you ever been arrested?
Not legally. That makes no sense. You get it.
I know what you meant.
I mean, that's true. I've never legally or illegally been arrested, so.
Colleen went back to school and got her GED, but she was restless and she was jumping from job to job. It was at this time that she met a couple named Bob and Alice and their 2-year-old son, Tomac. Colleen basically adopted herself into this family, and she moved with them to Eugene, Oregon, where Bob and Alice were from. In Oregon, jobs were hard to come by, and Colleen could barely make ends meet. She did make money collecting and selling moss, which I didn't know that was a thing that one could make money doing.
Perhaps in the Pacific Northwest, yes.
But like what? Like crafts? Like
Maybe
for aquariums,
maybe
terrariums?
Pollination. Oh yeah, no, I bet that's what it is.
Like
yeah.
to pet stores?
Mm-hmm. I bet that's what it is.
Garden places?
I thought maybe people just wanted to grow different kinds of moss. Maybe there's a market for that.
But can't they just go out and scrape it off a rock themselves?
I mean, there's different kinds, question mark.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
These will be fun emails to get.
To be continued. Yeah. They're like, there is 743 varieties of moss, and I don't know how you don't know that.
That comes in part 2.
You learn something new every day. Mm-hmm. I will provide a moss update in part 2. Overall, Colleen's life in Oregon was unremarkable until the fateful day she decided to take a trip. Colleen's friend Linda lived in Westwood, a small town in Northern California, and Colleen decided she was going to visit Linda for her birthday. It was the late 1970s, so what better way to travel than hitchhiking?
I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
On Thursday, May 19th, 1977, around 11 a.m., Colleen was dropped off on the freeway near Eugene, Oregon by Alice and Bob. Colleen said goodbye and told Alice she would be back in 2 days on Saturday. Colleen made good time, and after just 2 rides, she made it to Red Bluff, California around 4 p.m., which is about an hour-and-a-half drive from her Westwood destination. Colleen looked for her next ride. A carload of guys pulled up and offered her a ride, but she turned them down as she felt it was too risky. Mm-hmm. Another couple stopped, but they were only going a short distance, so she turned them down too. Oh. Then a blue Dodge Colt pulled over.
No too many details.
There was a young couple inside, Cameron and Janice Hooker, and Janice was holding her young baby. The Hookers were headed in the right direction, and Colleen felt they looked trustworthy. So Colleen threw her sleeping bag and backpack in the back seat and climbed in. She didn't pay much attention to a wooden box that was on the seat beside her.
Oh my God.
I'm going to pause here to give you a little more background on the Hookers. Cameron, especially. Cameron Hooker was born on November 5th, 1953, to Harold and Lorena Hooker, who had moved to California from Arkansas looking for a better life. The Hookers moved every 2 to 3 years, struggling to make ends meet while Harold looked for work at sawmills or construction sites, Lorena staying home to care for Cameron and his younger brother Dexter. The boys were well cared for, but the constant moves uprooted any sense of normalcy, forcing them to say goodbye to friends they had just made.
Oh, that's hard.
I feel like that would be hard for even like the most well-adjusted child.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cameron was described as generally quiet and a happy kid in grammar school. In 1969, his family bought some property in Red Bluff and parked their mobile home at a permanent address. By that time, Cameron had reached his teen years. He was tall and gangly with thick horn-rimmed glasses, and he was outcast by the cool kids.
Of course.
Which weren't we all?
Can't wear glasses and be cool.
No. Nowadays you can.
Yeah.
Now the kids
I'm
wearing
wearing them right now.
Now, aren't kids nowadays wearing like lensless glasses?
Are they? I don't know. Probably. Yeah. The blue light glasses. I don't know. Well,
you
they
need
have
that so you don't
mustaches
get a
now
headache.
too.
The cool kids.
All of them. Yeah. They all have mustaches.
Anyways, he wasn't on any teams or involved in any organizations, but he did excel at shop classes where he learned about tools, machines, and construction. In 1972, after graduating high school, Cameron got a job at the local lumber mill. His job gave him time for his dark mind to roam and fantasize.
Yeah, you kind of like rolled right through his hobbies and what he learned, and I don't appreciate that.
Well, he was developing, while he was working on his construction skills, he was developing a deep desire and love for bondage and dominating women.
Oh, okay.
Porn fueled his desires, and he was drawn to whips, handcuffs, leather, and chains. Which, to each their own.
Of course.
No judgment on just the liking of it.
Sure.
You do you. These were all just fantasies inside Cameron's mind until he was introduced to 15-year-old Janice. Cameron was around 20 at the time. Cameron and Janice began dating, and they did things that an average couple would do at first, going for burgers and fries and going to see movies. Janice loved the attention from Cameron as she was very shy and insecure, which is probably a bad personality trait to have if you're dating an older, domineering man. A few months into their relationship, Cameron asked Janice if he could strap her up naked to a tree in the woods.
He waited the acceptable amount of time.
A few months, yep.
Yeah.
Wanting to make Cameron happy, Janice agreed, and although the leather straps he used to hang her up hurt her wrists, she said he was so affectionate to her after the fact that she didn't say no when he asked her to do it again.
Oh dear. I never ever want video on our podcast because I just don't. However, you would see the permanent cringe I have on my face as Marina is telling me all of I was going to say not even the worst details.
This is like the consensual piece of it.
That's why I'm cringing already.
This became a pattern, and Cameron and Janice went into the woods 2 to 3 times a month to engage in these escapades.
I don't know why it had to be in the woods.
I don't know. Maybe just like out of sight.
I guess. Anyway.
Janice was tied to trees, staked to the ground, or just plain tied up.
Maybe that's why.
Cameron introduced whips and would hit Janice hard enough to leave welts, but not permanent marks. He would even tie Janice up, and he would dunk her in the creek. On one occasion, she almost drowned, and although she was scared, she was not scared enough to walk away from Cameron, who she'd already been dating for 1.5 years at that time. Janice put up with Cameron's desires for his attention, and she felt as though she could endure it because when she said stop, he would. Janice was in love and wanted Cameron to commit, so at 16 years old, she lied and told him she was pregnant. Cameron agreed to marry her, and Janice's parents were thrilled, giving them $500 for a wedding present.
Oh my gosh.
The two were married on January 18th, 1975.
Oh, for a second, I thought today was January 18th, but it's not. It's close.
Not. It's the 21st.
Okay. Happy belated anniversary.
Although the marriage was founded on deceit, Cameron and Janice were in love. Unfortunately, Cameron's tendencies were getting more violent, and Janice took the brunt of it. Sometimes Cameron choked Janice until she passed out, and not long into their marriage, when Janice and Cameron had a fight, he got so mad he put a knife to her throat and asked her if she wanted to die. Another time, Cameron showed Janice a scene in one of his underground newspapers. It was of a horrific crucifixion, and told her that if he ever killed her, that's how he would do it.
Oh.
Cameron began to get more creative with his BDSM props as well. He took a gas mask and taped over the eyes and air holes. He showed it to Janice, who was like, no, thank you.
Right.
And Cameron gagged her to keep her from screaming and shoved it over her head.
How did she not die then?
I do not know.
Oh my God.
I guess air would still come in, just like not a ton.
Yeah.
But I mean, he would choke her till she passed out too.
True.
So I don't think
my
he really
God.
cared if she was conscious.
That's fair. True.
It was around this time that Cameron began discussing a lifelong fantasy.
Oh, no.
He wanted to bring someone into their home to be his sex slave. He said he wanted, quote, a girl who couldn't say no. Cameron discussed his fantasy with Janice and told her that if she'd allow the sex slave, that slave would be the brunt of his more demanding practices, which had to be incredibly enticing to Janice.
I was just going to say, if you put yourself in Janice's shoes or gas mask, as it were, then you...
It's fucked up.
It's the only way I make it through these.
I know.
But then I can see that being like, do it to someone else, please.
Yes, because she loves him and, but she doesn't want to leave. So she thought it over. And Janice reluctantly agreed under 2 conditions. 1, there would be no sexual intercourse between Cameron and the other woman. That was a sacred act for man and wife.
Okay.
And number 2, Cameron had to give Janice a baby. And with that, the deal was made. So Cameron began preparations. He built a wide platform with hooks for cuffs that he called the rack. He installed hooks in a beam in the ceiling in his basement for hanging. And he built what was called a head box. The head box was about the size of a hat box, but weighed nearly 20 pounds.
What's the reason for referring to the hat box as the unit of measure?
I don't know. It was
because
in the book.
I don't have very many hat boxes.
Well, probably because we're talking about like back in the 70s.
It's true. I also suppose
80s.
You can imagine a hat and therefore the box that would fit the hat.
Yeah. The only thing is like I have old hat boxes from my grandma, and they're much smaller than this monstrosity of a thing. So,
like what is it? What's the ratio of hat box to bread box, for example?
These are deep questions.
I don't have the answer. I just think the longer I interject with unrelated funny things, the longer I have before you tell me worse details.
We're coming back. We're coming back. So this 20-pound head box was made of a double wall of plywood with dense insulation in between the 2 layers.
I actually just got chills.
This is like Saw shit.
Oh.
It was hinged with metal, and there was carpet on the inside of the box. And then there was a circular hole in the bottom to accommodate someone's neck. And the wearer of the box would be blind with their screams muffled by the carpet and insulation.
My God. Oh. Dramatic page turn.
Cameron was ready, and he held up his end of the bargain. Janice got pregnant, for real this time, and had a baby girl in the fall of 1976. Now it was Cameron's turn to get his end of the deal. On May 19th, 1977, Cameron, Janice, and the baby got into their blue Dodge Colt and went hunting. It was then that they came across hitchhiking Colleen Stan, who again felt comfortable getting into the car with this family with a new baby.
Absolutely. Now I'm obviously not hitchhiking anytime soon, but even I would think probably fine.
You would pick the family with the baby over a car full of men.
Of course.
Yeah. Yep. So, it's crazy. As they were driving, Colleen was looking out at the gorgeous scenery, but Colleen couldn't help notice that Cameron kept looking back at her in the rearview mirror, and it was making her a little nervous. Cameron stopped the car at a local gas station to fill up, and Colleen got out of the car and went to the bathroom to change her shirt. She said a small voice in the back of her head was telling her to run and get away from this situation, but she couldn't figure out why. Colleen shook it off and got back in the car.
No.
And while they had stopped, Janice had bought some candy bars, and she shared them with Colleen as the 2 chatted and waited for Cameron. Super casual.
Yeah.
Once they were back on the road, Cameron asked if Colleen would mind if they took a short detour to check out some ice caves. Colleen didn't mind, but it wasn't like she had a choice anyways since she was hitchhiking. They pulled down off a dirt road and went about a mile before stopping. At that point, Janice stepped out of the car with the baby and walked over to a nearby stream. Cameron then got out, went to the passenger side, pulled the seat forward, jumped into the car, and put a knife to Colleen's throat, told her to put her hands up. After a stunned moment, Colleen complied, and then Cameron handcuffed her hands behind her back and tied a cloth tightly around Colleen's eyes. A leather strap was wrapped under her chin and tightened until she couldn't open her jaw. Cameron then tied her feet together, and then came the box. The wooden box that had been on the seat next to Colleen, Cameron's sick invention. Cameron forced Colleen to lie down, and he maneuvered her neck into the opening before closing the box with a snap. The box shut out all light and sound and pinched Colleen's thick hair against her neck. The carpeted interior was pressed against her face, and she was breathing in panicked gasps. Cameron then covered Colleen with her own sleeping bag in the back seat, and then Janice got back in the car with the baby, and the little family drove away. Colleen couldn't do anything but lay there helpless.
Yeah.
The box and the sleeping bag were stifling, and she was hot and panicked. It felt like an eternity before the car stopped, and Cameron took the box off Colleen's head. He let her sit up, and she started to cool down but didn't move. She was still completely blindfolded and tied up. The hookers ate a fast food meal in the front seat with Colleen in the back seat.
How nice.
And when they finished, they put the box back on her head, and the sleeping bag went back on. It was after dark when the hookers pulled into the alley behind their house at 1140 Oak Street. Cameron untied Colleen's feet and removed the head box so that she could walk inside the house, but she was still blindfolded, gagged, and handcuffed. Colleen was guided into the house and down into the basement. Once downstairs, Colleen was forced to stand on a Coleman cooler while she was subsequently handcuffed to a pipe above her head. She was then stripped of her shirt and jeans, and her handcuffs were replaced with thick leather straps that were fastened wide so that her arms were spread out above her head. That alone stresses me out.
Yes, all of this. I have to also compliment, I think, your writing, because I am there. I am in. I literally had to just remind myself to speak and participate in this podcast, but I'm there. It's up. It's bad.
That's why I couldn't leave out any details.
No, I'm glad you have. Well, semi-glad you have.
Well, I know. Yeah. Cameron then kicked the cooler out from under Colleen's feet, causing her to fall, and Colleen immediately felt the burning pain in her wrists and shoulders as her full weight pulled against the handcuffs. She struggled and kicked her legs, trying to find ground with her feet. Cameron whipped her and told her to stop, so Colleen hung still, crying, still blindfolded. The only thing is Colleen could see a sliver of the scene around her from beneath her blindfold, like how kids can see and cheat at Pin the Tail on the Donkey. Through that sliver, she noticed a pornographic magazine flipped open to a page displaying a woman in a similar position to how she was currently being held. Cameron was just living out his fantasies. After what must have felt like a lifetime, Cameron placed something back under Colleen's feet that allowed her to stand on her tiptoes to alleviate the weight from her arms. Cameron left her and walked upstairs and then returned with Janice.
Oh, no.
Janice and Cameron then proceeded to have sex on a low wooden structure in front of where Colleen was hung up. When they finished, Janice went back upstairs and Cameron turned his attention back to Colleen. Testing her, Cameron kicked Colleen's support out from under her again. To avoid another whipping, Colleen just hung still.
I'm still blown away that her shoulders didn't just pop out of their sockets. Like, I can't even imagine any of this. And here I am. Now I see why you would tell me that, or that you told me that I would be thinking about my rib. Is I pulled a muscle from coughing. Hashtag in your 30s. But now I'm just thinking how much that hurts. That's just a little baby muscle. And
yeah, I can't imagine the pain that you would feel in your shoulders and your arms like that.
Yeah, I would not do well is my point on that if this is bothering me so much.
I know. And she had the wherewithal to just stop. There's also a reason this is called the perfect victim. I mean, it's just how Colleen was. But for her, you know, after one time where she flailed, he whipped her. So he does it again and she doesn't flail. Like, I don't think I could do that mentally.
I don't think I could stop my body from reacting.
No. Nope. So when Colleen didn't flail the second time, Cameron returned the cooler and took her down, leading her to another box that was roughly square and 3 feet high. Colleen was placed in this box and her hands were secured with chains to the roof of the box. The head box was then snapped into place on top of this other box. Colleen felt like she was suffocating between the position that she was in and the head box, and she panicked. She began kicking her feet as hard as she could against the sides of the box. Cameron grabbed her feet, tied them with rope, and secured them to the side of the box before he left and walked away.
My jaw is hanging open.
There was a little slack in the rope binding her feet, so Colleen continued to kick the side of the box as best as she could and also screamed into the head box, even though she wasn't sure if anyone could hear her. Colleen carried on, hoping someone would hear, and her struggling brought Cameron back downstairs. He removed the head box and asked, "Why are you making so much noise?" Colleen told him that she couldn't breathe and begged him to let her out. Ignoring her pleas, he put the head box back on, left and returned with straps that he secured around her ribs and chest, constricting her breathing even further.
What?
Cameron also put an electrical device between Colleen's naked legs that was designed to shock her, but thankfully it failed to work.
Oh, God.
I'm not kidding. When I read this, I was in bed and I was...
Yeah.
Like I was literally taking deep breaths. I had a bad case of bronchitis once and I was like, somebody just take me out. I can't. Like that feeling that you can't breathe or get in enough oxygen is so anxiety inducing.
That's like there's some masks you can make if you're making a mask of your face and you have to like breathe through a straw.
Oh yeah.
And anytime, I don't know what shows I'm watching that they're doing this.
It's like death masks, right?
I don't know what I'm watching, but the thought of having to breathe through a straw is just, that's what this is making me think of. I don't like it. And so the square box that her body is in, well, the bottom half of her body did she have like her, I'm like doing it in real life. Did she have like her knees up? Was she kind of crouched, do you think? Or like sitting with her knees up?
It's not clear to me. And I don't think there's pictures of this one because I don't think it ended up evolving. But I picture it, so it was only 3 feet high.
Right.
I think there probably was like a hole where her head came through.
Right.
The head box sat on top.
Yeah.
And I don't know, 3 feet. She probably was crouched with her like legs together
maybe.
almost.
Yeah.
Like tucked underneath her. Because if she was kicking the sides of the box with her feet.
Oh, yeah. Because I was thinking she was sitting with like, you know how you'd sit with your knees up and your arms could be wrapped around your legs.
Well, her arms were tied to the top of the box.
I said could be if you weren't perhaps in a death box.
Yes. And then, so I think probably her feet were either to the side or like maybe tucked up, but enough that she could move them.
I'm not sure why I'm encouraging myself to have better
Deeper
pictures
thoughts
of this,
about
but I am.
this situation. Yeah. This
nightmare.
This situation did not last too long, but I cannot.
I need the second of it.
The belts around the ribs, I can't. It makes me take a really deep breath.
My bra is too tight. I get upset.
I know. Shirts, I'm like, this is constricting me. I can't breathe properly.
Oh, yeah. If you've ever put like a non-giving shirt or sweatshirt or like blazer on and you can't get it off.
You're like, I hate this. Yeah, I know. You just panic with it over your head.
Yep.
My toddler does that in the morning when I can't get it. Yeah. Get a shirt on.
Yep.
That's why I put the shirt over the head and then pull really hard so their head just pops through.
Yeah.
You don't want to.
I think he took the same approach with the head box.
You don't want a breathing situation to go on. It's horrifying.
No.
So the next morning, Cameron came downstairs and he took Colleen out of the box, which must have been a relief, if only for a moment.
Yeah.
He walked her across the basement and laid her down on the rack that he had built in preparation for her arrival.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yep. He locked her wrist chains to the hooks at the rack's top corners and tied her ankles to the hooks at the bottom. Cameron then left her there all day, spread out and unable to move. That night, Cameron took Colleen off the rack so that she could eat dinner, the first food or water she had been given since she was kidnapped the day before. She had potatoes au gratin, which seems very fancy for like a kidnapped meal, and a glass of water.
Okay.
She was allowed to use a bedpan before being hung up again by the cuffs for a while, then placed back in the cage.
Oof.
Colleen spent the second day spread out on the rack like she had the first. That night, she was again removed so that she could eat dinner. She was brought 2 large egg sandwiches and a glass of water. Colleen only finished half of a sandwich and the water and told Cameron she was full. He was furious, so he strung her up and beat her until she passed out.
What?
When she woke up, he beat her some more before he took her down and forced her to eat the remaining food before once again being returned to the box.
Why was he so mad?
He was mad that she was wasting food.
Oh, gosh.
And this was her new routine.
Oh, no.
Although Colleen didn't know this, no one was looking for her. Colleen wasn't reported missing until Wednesday, May 25th, almost a week after she was taken by Cameron. Her roommate had been worried when she didn't arrive back in Eugene on Saturday, May 21st, like she said she would, but figured maybe she was just late. By that Monday, Alice, again the roommate, called Colleen's mom about her absence, a call which left them both worried. No one had cell phones, so it makes it a little trickier to check in with people.
Yep. And we talked about this before, where like it's not that at the time it wasn't that big a deal. It was like 2 or 3 days you were going, you know.
And if you're hitchhiking, like maybe you just couldn't get a ride.
Right. Exactly.
Alice knew Colleen was going to see Linda in Westwood, so she called the Westwood police, who checked in with Linda. It was like old school text messaging. Linda reported she hadn't seen Colleen. And by Wednesday, Colleen was reported missing to the Eugene police.
Wednesday?
By Wednesday. Yeah. A missing persons report was filled out, and a bulletin with Colleen's description was broadcasted. It received
late. Yeah.
It received no response, and that was it.
Oh my gosh.
Colleen had simply vanished, and no one had any reason to believe that she'd been kidnapped and was currently being tortured.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, where would you even begin? How could you even begin to look for her?
Right. Yeah. So it's like they don't even know if this is one of those situations where they felt like she just walked away.
Yep.
So meanwhile, Colleen endured long periods of time, gagged, blindfolded, naked, and with her head in the box. She continued to spend her days on the rack, but was given a brief break at night when she was fed leftovers, given some water, and allowed to use the bedpan. 1 meal a day, 1 break a day. Oof. She was then hung and whipped before being chained up again for the night. Rinse and repeat until Cameron built something new.
Oh, no.
Using plywood he took from work, Cameron built a box that was about 3 feet high and 6.5 feet long, and it had a smaller box inside. He put Colleen's sleeping bag inside on the bottom before putting her in naked and blindfolded. Cameron then put a long chain around Colleen's neck, locked her wrist chains to it before pulling it down and securing her ankles. Lastly, he put wax earplugs in her ears. Colleen's...
I don't like that.
No.
That's such a attention to detail. Yes.
The sensory deprivation is a lot. Colleen's hearing was muffled, but that didn't stop her from hearing the coffin box lid close and the padlock slid into place.
I don't like this. I can't do multiple parts of this.
I told you it was toy. It was like, it's toy box
it's
killer
worse.
bad.
I think it's
really
worse
bad.
because I spared the details.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Didn't make multiple parts about it.
So sorry.
I did read the book though, so
I know.
There's that.
I know, but I'm sparing you the specifics.
Yeah, you're giving me just enough to put my brain there. So thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. Colleen was kept in this box going forward, which I can't really say whether it would be better or worse than the last setup.
Right.
At this point, Colleen hadn't showered, bathed, or brushed her teeth in 5 weeks.
Oh.
She was only given small amounts of food and water, deprived enough that she stopped getting her period.
Jeez.
Colleen could only tell the passage of time within the box based upon the temperature. It was cooler in the morning. She was hottest midday. And then the box would begin to cool off near dinner time.
Oh my God.
The box was cooler when she was entombed after her night activities, especially since it could air out while she was out for the night. There was an old hairdryer on a no-heat setting attached to air holes in the box to keep air flowing, but it did nothing to cool the box off. And not only that, Colleen had to listen to the sound of the hairdryer blowing at all times.
That would be okay with me because I sleep with white noise. But
100% of the time.
I'm kidding, obviously. And also, what do you do with your mind in this? You know, I don't mean how do you pass the time, but like how do you escape your mind?
I think you might like just black out. Like,
I think you have to.
I think your subconscious would do something to try to help you survive. I would not survive this situation.
No.
I would not. Colleen is a bad ass bitch.
Wow.
Insane.
Wow.
Cameron was learning about keeping a slave on the fly, and he didn't always get it right. He realized Colleen's weight was plummeting from depriving her, so he began tracking it and making her get on a scale. He was careful not to hang Colleen too long from her wrists, since he knew that the cuffs cut off circulation, and he didn't want to deal with gangrene infections or have Colleen die.
Sure.
3 months into his venture, he also realized he had to give Colleen a bath. But he took it as an opportunity to just inflict more harm.
I'm disgusted that it took him that long to be bothered to have that occur to him.
I know. I can't. I just can't. It's unfathomable.
Yeah,
That's the word. This is another word of the episode. Unfathomable.
Yeah, you only get 2 this whole podcast. Okay, no more.
Well,
I want fathomable.
My parts.
Right. Well,
let me finish all the unfathomable parts.
And then I want fathomable cases.
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
So after Cameron and Janice's baby had been put to bed, Cameron brought Colleen upstairs and he taped her hands behind her back, taped the blindfold and her mouth, and then tied her legs to a broomstick before putting her face down in the water. Colleen was helpless and couldn't pull her knees up to get her face out of the water because of the broomstick, so she was drowning. When the bubbles stopped, Cameron pulled her up, and he repeated this at least 24 times, taking pictures the entire time.
I'm trying.
I know. I know. There's nothing
These
to say.
are all of my worst fears.
I know.
Add an industrial fan and I'm just going to have an aneurysm.
If there was an industrial fan in this room, I would jump into it.
That's true. You know what? That actually sounds a lot better. That's true.
At the first opportunity.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Once Cameron was done with his activities, Janice was brought in to tend to Colleen's matted, knotted hair. Conditioner was useless, and Janice ended up cutting off about 5 inches, and then Colleen was returned to her box. Short of breaking his promise of fidelity to Janice, Cameron came up with sadistic ways to torture Colleen. He electrocuted her with live wires, burned her with a heat lamp, strangled her, and made her perform fellatio. The savageness of Cameron's behavior towards Colleen became a little bit too much for Janice, and she left in the late summer.
Like left for good?
She left the house, yes. She spent weeks at her sister's house and spent her weekends with Cameron.
Oh, okay.
So
okay,
no,
so
not
just
good.
like,
But she
okay.
left the house for the week.
Right. Just a lower percentage of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Knowing
That
what was
makes
going
it
on
palatable.
underneath her feet.
Okay.
She never said a word about what was going on at home, and she was too afraid to leave Cameron. She was only gone a few months, and she returned home for good to avoid the long commute because it was very inconvenient.
You know, that really, I don't know what was going through Janice's mind at all, but I get really mad at the fact that she didn't say anything, because you don't have some serial killer out there that's like gonna hunt you down and kill you. Like, he's torturing
one
this girl.
person, right.
And you could very easily go to the police and you don't have to prove anything.
Right.
All you have to do is say, go to the house.
Yeah.
Here's what's happening. You're not like risking them not believing you, you know.
Correct.
That makes me very angry, because she had
But she
the
loved
opportunity.
him.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But she loved him.
Only on
And they had a
weekends.
baby together.
That child.
I
Poor
know.
child.
I know. I think potentially, I'm not making excuses for Janice, potentially there could have been some sort of brainwashing that had gone on between Cameron and
Because
Janice.
she was young. And
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
She was like indoctrinated into this life.
That's true.
From such an early age.
Actually
But
wonder, I don't think he did it intentionally, but he essentially did brainwash her, and like little by little it got her to think like, oh, this is normal.
Right.
Like, it's
And
not
they made
that
a
crazy.
deal for this.
You know, like to
Yeah.
us it sounds crazy, but like for her, she's like, oh, it's only this much further from what we were doing, so it's not that bad. Whereas we're like, that's fucking nuts.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh God.
Cameron was careful to keep his darkness in the basement. He never let on to his obsessions to anyone in his life, including friends and family.
Oh, because he was still working and all that, right?
Oh, yeah. He was just living. They were just going on living their life with Colleen in the basement. He squirreled away his dark pornography, and he learned to develop all of his own photos of Janice and Colleen, because I don't think the local Photoshop would appreciate that.
No.
Yeah. Cameron wanted a sex slave, but now that he had kept her so long, he also wanted to put Colleen to work. He developed 2 head boxes, but the one he wanted her to wear to perform her tasks was much heavier and cumbersome. He designed a rigging system on the ceiling and counterbalanced the weight of the head box with a large water jug so that Colleen could walk with this thing on her head.
My God. I can't believe it was that heavy. I guess that makes sense. It's out of like wood and
It's full of,
insulated.
like,
and
yes. The ingenuity involved is like so fucked up.
He's like, I learned this new thing at work. Let me go try it at home.
Insane.
Application.
Colleen's job, completely blind to the task, was to sand a redwood slab by feel. It took her days to complete, but she got the job done. Cameron, the creative psychopath that he was, started on a new project, probably with the wood that Colleen was sanding.
Sure.
He built a triangular box to fit beneath the staircase in the basement. It had a door, a ceiling, a light, a concrete floor, and carpeted walls for soundproofing.
Sure.
Of course.
Naturally.
He was probably a loyal customer at the local carpet store. It was called the workshop, and there was even a chair inside. Cameron put Colleen inside the workshop blindfolded. He left a sack of walnuts at her feet and told her she could remove the blindfold and shell the nuts. This was the first time she was permitted to remove the blindfold in 6 months. For 6 months, she had this blindfold around her head. It's
can't,
unfathomable.
It is, because she wasn't bathing, and when she was, she still had the blindfold on and was going through that torture. It literally never came off.
No.
Not like, oh, it was on most of the day. I mean, wow.
Insane. Colleen was just happy to have unobscured vision.
Sure.
She got to actually use her eyes. She worked through the night shelling the walnuts as she had been told. Come morning, Cameron went to the workshop, told her to put her blindfold on, and then chained her back up in the box. The workshop changed her routine. She was now to stay up at night working on a project for Jan or Cameron, often crochet or macrame. The hookers sold Colleen's projects at a flea market to bring in extra cash for the family. Can you imagine buying like crocheted socks and then come to find out they were crocheted by a kidnapped sex slave kept in a workshop?
I mean, when I see all the fast fashion with crochet stuff, that's actually exactly what I think.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because crochet you can't do on a machine.
No.
So, fun fact. I wonder if she crocheted before. That would be so sad, because it's so fun to crochet, and then it would now be forever associated with the workshop.
Not fun.
But I hope, I feel like we've talked about this in other cases like this, having something to do.
Like past the time.
Yeah, mitigates a little bit of the torture.
That had to be better. I would rather be crocheting
than in the
even
coffin.
for labor, than in the coffin box.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
The holiday season came and Colleen missed Christmas with her family. A week later, she turned 21 in the box. Cameron did get her a long blue terry cloth nightgown to wear in the workshop, as Colleen had been getting cold now that winter had set in. Cameron had an affinity for BDSM magazines and publications, and they included photos and articles that inspired him and some of the scenes that he was using for Colleen.
Sure.
In a January 1st, 1978 edition of Inside News, an underground newspaper,
that is really an innocent name.
It is.
I'm upset with that.
Because it kept making me think of Inside Edition.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is not nefarious.
That's what we call our intranet at work. So
Inside News?
No, just inside, but I'm upset now.
Now you want to be outside.
Yeah. I'm really upset because I'm going to look at that tomorrow and
be sad.
I'm going to be back here.
So in this insidious newspaper, there was an article about a slavery contract, and Cameron was immediately all over this. What a perfect idea for his own slave. Cameron tried to duplicate this contract from the newspaper, but he failed. So he went and bought a typewriter for Janice to type it up in duplicate. Cameron, as master in the document, would be known as Michael Powers. The witness to the contract's execution would be Janice.
Oh, of course.
But she would go by Janet Powers.
Well, yeah.
Cameron copied calligraphy from the magazine at the top and put a seal at the bottom. Had to make it super official.
I hope he used gold foil.
Mm-hmm. On January 25th, 1978, Cameron interrupted Colleen in the workshop and confronted her with the document. It was the first time since May that she had seen his face, and he had already kept her for 8 months at this point.
Oh, God.
Cameron sat Colleen down to educate her on this contract, and he wanted to tell her about something called, quote, the company. He gave her an article about the slavery contracts, and he explained that there was a group of underground slave traders trafficking women who were forced to sign contracts to relinquish control over their lives, their bodies, and their souls. He said the company traded women and was also tasked to hunt down and punish runaway slaves. Cameron explained to Colleen that he was plugged in, that the company knew he had her,
sure,
and now he had to register her. Janice came down into the basement with the slavery contract, and Colleen was told that unless she signed it, the company would take her away from Cameron and put her into the slave network. Colleen was confused because the slavery contract looked like the type of contract being talked about in the article that Cameron said he was trying to save her from. Mm-hmm. But, those are details.
Details, yeah.
Colleen asked what would happen if she didn't sign it, and Cameron said he would sign it for her and then punish her. Cameron explained that Michael Powers was his company name. Colleen considered the document and told Cameron he couldn't have her soul because it belonged to God, but she did sign the document feeling that she had no other choice.
This is so fucked up.
And again, Cameron's logic made no sense because he's saying that like he's connected to the company and he needs her to be registered with the company in his name to save her from the company and save her from the network. But I also assume that this is one of those situations where like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Exactly.
So you would be like, I know what he's doing to me and I have survived thus far. Like, don't know what other people in the company would do.
I'm proud of her for protecting her soul, though, because when I heard that, I was like, really? We need to take her fucking soul, too?
Right.
Are you kidding?
She said that he couldn't have it because it already belonged to God.
For her.
Oh, so wholesome.
I'm trying to picture this conversation, just like rationally negotiating contracts in the workshop.
I know. Which, how rational can you be after being like deprived for 8 months? Like you're just, you're along for the ride.
I'm pretty sure that contract would be thrown out in a court of law.
I don't think it would be valid if, I haven't taken contracts in a while, but I want to say I remember a few things from law school.
Just a guess.
Yeah.
That might qualify as under duress.
Yes. Yep. A little bit. The lies continued. Cameron said the company required she wear a slave collar for identification, which of course Cameron had ready to go. He also told her it would cost him $1,500 to register her with the company, but he said now that she was signed up, he could let her do more things around the house for him because he had the company's resources to back him. They would monitor the house and the phone lines, so if she ever tried to run or get away, they would catch her and torture her mercilessly.
In a way, it's brilliant.
I know.
It's awful, to say the least, but it's a little bit brilliant.
It's brainwashing for like...
Because that's way more powerful than any lock you can put on a door.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
He told Colleen that runaways had their hands nailed to a beam and were hung there for days, which is crucifixion.
Yes.
To further sell the story, Cameron told Colleen that Janice had been a slave too and that she had run away. She was caught, brought back, and hung up for days. He said her hips and legs were permanently damaged, which was supported by a brace Janice wore on her knee, which was for a completely unrelated knee surgery. His story was elaborate. He said Janice was brought back to the company and worked at a place called Rent a Dungeon. Janice was a prostitute wearing a cross, meaning she was marked for death. Men could pay to be with any woman and do whatever he wanted to her at Rent a Dungeon. If the guy accidentally killed the woman, he owed a $10,000 fine.
This is like if I had a nightmare and I was repeating to you what happened in this nightmare. That's what I feel like I'm listening to.
I'm also pretty sure there's a Liam Neeson movie about this. He has a particular set of skills.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Cameron said that's where he met Janice, and he felt sorry for her, so he bought her and married her to save her life.
There's some root of truth there.
Cameron then gave Colleen a slave name, which was just the letter K. And that's what they called her from that day forward. Once the rules had all been firmly established and Colleen understood she was now Cameron's property, she was given more freedoms as promised. She was allowed upstairs at night to cook, clean, do laundry, and any other tasks ordered by Cameron or Janice. In order to ensure that Colleen understood that she was a slave to Cameron's every whim, he came up with what he called attention drills. Whenever he shouted, "Attention!" Colleen had to strip off all her clothes, stand on her tiptoes, and reach her hands up to the top of the arched doorway between the living room and dining room. She had to stand there tensed, naked, except for the slave collar, until he told her she could relax.
Oh my God.
Cameron also intermittently reminded Colleen about the existence of the company. He even showed Colleen an official laminated registration card showing that Colleen Stan was registered to Michael Powers as his slave.
Oh my God.
Cameron truly scared the shit out of Colleen talking about the company.
How would you know? How like,
you wouldn't.
I'm not tied into the slave networks. I don't know.
Also, I am 100% sure there is shit that exists in the entire world that is unfathomable.
Yes.
And I don't want to be a part of it.
No. And this is before, obviously, the internet. So you don't know what's out there and what's real and what isn't. And he's clearly fucked up. Yeah. He's clearly, if anyone's going to be part of these networks, it's going to be him.
And he spent his entire life like reading about all this porn. And like I said, when you're dealing with consensual people, like you guys do whatever. You, like whatever. But like it's fucked up here because it's not consensual in any way, shape, or form.
No. She did sign a contract. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Fucked up, Laura.
It is. I gotta,
But Cameron would continually tell Colleen about these other stories of what happened to other company women so that it made what she was enduring at Cameron's home seem reasonable.
And like you said, devil you know.
Yes.
Yep.
Cameron told her about a woman. The fact that he even just made this up,
No.
Cameron told her about a woman he said ran away. And he said she wrote an article about the company and her ordeal with the company. He said that he told Colleen the company devised a special punishment for her when they found her. He said first they pulled off her fingers one at a time.
Oh my God.
Then her toes. A member who was a surgeon was called in to remove her arms and legs without anesthetic. And still alive, she had her tongue cut out and her hearing destroyed. They blinded her with a soldering gun. And finally, they hung her from her braided hair on a hook next to her master's bed. Like this is fucking disgusting, but I had to include it because it will be relevant later on. Like this is what Colleen is being told.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is what she would face if she tried to run away.
Right.
And she's told this every day.
Daily, right.
Yep, every day. During her captivity, the hookers planned to move from Oak Street to Pershing Road, still in Red Bluff, and so Colleen had to be moved in the night. While still on Oak Street, Colleen was left in the workshop for almost 48 hours so that Cameron could alter her coffin box. He had reconstructed it so that it would fit in a frame for a waterbed at the hooker's new home.
Oh my God.
The waterbed was upholstered in black with the whole frame raised on a wooden pedestal. There was a hole at the base of the bed that served as the entrance for the coffin box. In the dark of the night, Colleen was blindfolded and brought to the hooker's new home. Cameron took off Colleen's blindfold and showed her the hole under the bed. He said, "This is where you're going to be staying." Mm-hmm. Colleen had to crawl on her hands and knees to get inside the coffin under the bed. And once inside, Cameron placed a board across the opening and bolted it shut. He then covered it with a panel that he'd cut specifically to fit over the board to disguise the opening.
Oh my God.
And finally, he pushed some steps against the foot of the bed. And this would be Colleen's home for the next 6 years, which we will talk about more in the next episode.
Oh my God, Maria. Why do we do these at night? I'm going to have horrible nightmares tonight. Why do I do a true crime podcast? I don't know why I'm on this.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
It's unfathomable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I'm like reading this shit right before I fall asleep at night, and I have wonderful dreams. I don't know. I've heard there's something wrong with me.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. This is so much worse than I was ready for.
It's really fucked up.
Is it gonna get even worse? Or is it just gonna continue on this trajectory?
It gets different.
Okay.
Maybe not worse, but different.
Yeah. All right. I'll take.
And
I don't know if I want
included
different,
all of the details because it's very important. They're very important to me, I think, in the overall tale.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did. So, if you're enjoying listening to Grimm, which Laura is not, please rate and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you don't miss any episodes. If you listen to us on Apple if you listen to if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, make our day by leaving us a written review. We got a couple new ones recently. We just screenshot them. Apparently, they do nothing for our metrics or like how we're seen, and I don't care. They do something
for these metrics. Yeah. I'm pointing at my heart.
She's rubbing her heart. Yes. You can find our page on Facebook by searching Grimm: A True Crime Podcast. If you want to subscribe to our Patreon, you can go to Patreon and search Grimm: A True Crime Podcast. You can get a shout out, and we also have a bunch of P-bonies on there. Follow us on Instagram at Grimm Crime. Wow. I'm having a real hard time.
Don't follow whatever she just said.
On Instagram at Grimm Crime Podcast for information on future episodes and case photos. If you want to send us a case suggestion or just say hi, you can email us at grimmcrimepodcast@gmail.com. Listen, learn, and stay alive until next time, because the future is grim.